forgot to do that. There we go. So Manal's just typing in here. Hi everyone, this is Lori, and it is, what is the date today? We're looking at Monday, September the 25th, and this is our live Skype session for Math 1046, whoops, and Unit 1. And I've just been answering some questions about next week's proctored test. So Evan asked if it's a different format than what we're used to in Pearson, and I was just explain that it was the same format as the pre-test and the homework, except that it will be under a proctored situation, 2-hour time limit. You won't have access to the question help tool, so you'll have to wean yourself off of that. And you won't have access to your notes. You are allowed a 1-page study sheet, homemade, both sides. Put whatever you want on that. And a calculator, and of course they'll give you some scrap paper as well. And Manal had asked whether it would also include questions from the refresher unit, and it's not. It's only on Unit 1 work, and every unit test will only be on that unit. So we won't ask you to recall stuff from the last unit. So just the tests are always focused on the unit where they're found. And then Manal's asking, is the assessment grade included in our final grade? And that assessment grade, Manal, you mean from the refresher unit, I believe? Let me know. But if you mean yes. So no grades from the refresher unit are being used for your final grade. So I haven't put any of those grades in to your grades in D2L, and nor will you ever see them. We're going to start with Unit 1, and you'll get your homework from Unit 1, your pre-test, and your test. So none of the refresher marks are going towards your final grade. Perfect. So are there any other general questions about just in terms of getting things done for the deadline, which has been moved to Monday? Let me just look at my calendar, October the 2nd, and the proctor test needs to be completed by October the 4th at the very latest, and that is in a proctored situation. If you haven't gotten your appointment yet, you should do so right away, because those seats fill up, and depending on what campus you are expecting to go to write your test, their testing hours might be different. Now you can go to any testing center in the province. You don't have to stick to your home campus. But I know for many of you, depending on where you are, you really only have one choice because others are going to be farther away. For those of you that are in the HRM, you seem to have more opportunity because there's Akerley campus, there's the Ivany campus, and of course the IT campus as well. Okay. So this is really our first real Skype session for Math 1046, because we are starting the Unit 1, which are the outcomes. The refresher unit was just getting us up to speed on where we need to be, and now Unit 1 it covers the first outcomes for Math 1046. So with that, the way that the Skypes run is that because I already give you out the review videos are the PowerPoints that I used to do in the live Skype sessions, but I found that there wasn't much interaction for them, so it was just better to videotape them and then have students come with their questions to the live Skype sessions so that I could go over them. For the students that are not able to come to the live session but do want me to go over a question, all you have to do is email it to me before the session, and I'm happy to go over it even if you're not here, so that you can watch the recording. So this week I haven't had anybody send me a question to do, and some students would rather put it in the Q&A discussion area for the unit, so feel free to do that as well. But those of you that are here, Austin, Evan, and Manal, do you have any questions that you've brought that you would like me to do before I move on to some other things. I'm going to open the floor to you three. Don't feel pressured. I'm happy that you folks came tonight to see what was going on, and maybe you're just here to see if you can get some tips and tricks, which is great. But if you do have a question, grab your mic now or text in the chat window. But if you don't have any questions, just let me know in the chat window that at this time you don't have any questions. So Evan's got one up right now. When we complete the homework on My Math Lab, is there a way we submit it, or do we just complete it and that's it? Evan, you just complete it and that's it. And then after the deadline on Monday, what I do is I manually sync it. So right now, if you go into D2L under grades, your progress, you won't see any grades from My Math Lab because I wait until after the deadline when I'm sure that everybody's done what they wanted to do in their homework, and then I have to manually click a sync button, and then they all come down and in. So that won't happen until after that deadline. But yep, there's no final submit buttons for those. No problem. And Austin's fine right now. That's great. Manal, how about you? Do you have any questions for me that you'd like to start off with? Nope, you're good. Okay, great. Well, we're only here until 7:45. I do have another Skype at 8. If you think of any questions that you would like to ask, just go ahead and put it in the chat window. Just let me know you have a question, and then I'll just pass it over to you and ask you to say it on the mic. But if you would rather type out your question, feel free to do that at any time, and I'll scan for that. And then this week, if there are any students that have questions, post to the Q&A discussion board, email me, and I'm happy to answer those questions. So with that, let's see. I have a few things that I'm going to bring up. As I said, P.1, P.2, P.3, and P.4 is what the test covers. The pre-test is going to give you an idea of the types of questions that are going to be, not the types of questions, it's going to give you an idea of how you're doing on the outcomes. You'll see similar questions on the test, but you'll also see questions that you have never seen before. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that you understand the skills that we're asking you to learn and are able to apply them under different question formats. We're not going to try and trick you and give you something that's really hard that takes your skill and then asks you to apply it like in really, really high level context, but we will change the wording of questions. We will give you something new, but for the most part it'll be questions that you've seen in your homework and in your pre-test, but there will be some questions that are formatted a little bit different but is still asking you to understand the same concept. So I find that students sometimes feel that the pre-test and the test should be exactly the same, just with different data. Just be aware that they won't be the exact same questions. You'll have some that are familiar to you, and then there's probably about a quarter that are just worded in a different way just to test you on that sort of a thing. So with that, feel free to come in and out of the session at any time, folks. So if that's all you need to see, great. If you have to go early, there's a recording. But what I'm going to do now is I've prepared a few questions that I find students have had problems with or questions about, and then if that sparks any questions, just type in the chat window or grab the mic, and I'll be happy to go over those questions for you. And hi Shane, if you can hear me, let me know in the chat window. Welcome. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is just interval versus set builder notation. I find that some students don't have difficulty writing one or the other. So I'm just going to switch to my notes where I have this information. There we go. And I see Shane's typing, so I think he can hear me. I'm going to grab my pen. There we go. Awesome, Shane. Shane, do you have any questions before we begin? Just going over a few sticky questions. No worries if you don't. Great, Shane. So again, I'm not going to rehash everything that I've done in the review videos, which I posted on the news feed, but I am going to go over a few things just to see if I can spur more questions or clarify a couple of things. So the first one is this interval versus set builder notation, and we talked about unions and intersections of sets. So what I have here is I have one interval here, which is between +1 and +4, and you can see that I have round brackets compared to the other interval, which is between +2 and +8, but here I have square brackets. So the first thing that you need to be able to do is differentiate between round brackets and square brackets. And all they mean is that round brackets, you don't include the numbers, and the square brackets mean that you do include the numbers in the set. So when you're doing these types of questions, one of the things that you can do is you can draw number lines for each of the sets. So for the first set of 1 to 4, and we're dealing with the positive number line for both of these sets. So I'm just going to start at 0 and then create 2 number lines, one for each of those sets listed. And then 2, 4, 6, 8. How you number these, it's okay. I'm just going to do it. Whoops, skip my odds. 2, 4. I'd like them to line up a little bit. There we go. 2, 4, 6, 8. So the first one, which is this, I'm going to change my color here. This set of +1 to +4 and not including them, that's going to be right here. So from 1 to +4. So my round brackets, my parentheses for that one. And then my second one is this set here, which is +2, but this time I'm including the 2, so that's a square bracket on my number line, to +8 right here. Once you have shown on your number lines both sets using square and round brackets, the next thing to do is to decide what are you doing here. And this symbol is an intersection of sets. So intersection is that upside down U. The regular U would be a union. But in this case, we're looking for the intersection of the sets. So what I want to do is I want to include the numbers that are found in both of the sets. So if I highlight where the numbers come together, it's going to be this region here. Well, from the 2, sorry. And that might help if I, oops, shoot, sorry about this. Just quickly put that in. And there's my 1. My 2 should have been over a little bit, so, and that's a round bracket. I knew when I was drawing that I wasn't drawing it very well. There we go. And my 4. So this is the area that I should be highlighting where the 2 sets intersect and combine. And then looking at this, you can see that I have a square bracket at my 2. So when I do my interval notation, it's going to include the 2, and then it's going to go to my 4, but my 4 has the round bracket. So that's how you decide whether your solution includes square brackets or round brackets, by looking at your 2 number lines. So my 2 had a square bracket because it's found in both sets, but there's a square bracket in the second set, so it's included. The 4 is included in both, or is part of both sets, but because in this first set it's not considered included, it means that I have to finish this interval set with a round bracket. So this is the answer to just the interval notation, if that's what they were asking for. So that's the interval notation. Set builder notation takes a little bit longer to write. Does anybody have questions, though, before I move on to set builder notation about the interval notation, where I get the square bracket and the round bracket? If you're okay, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know with a question. But it sounds like everybody's okay so far. Perfect. Okay. Great. Okay, so the interval notation, just a little bit longer to write. I like to say that in this case you're writing in Mathglish, which is just trying to write a mathematical expression in sentence form. So set builder notation, you're always going to start off with curly brackets, and you're going to start off with the unknown number x. And what set builder notation is doing, it's saying, what can x be? What are the unknowns in this intersection? Well, x can be any number between 2 and 4. It's going to let me write my 4. No. Nope. Put my 4 a little bit closer. There we go. So it's between 2 and 4, and that's what x is. X is between 2 and 4, but x is going to be greater than 2 and also equal to 2. So you have to put the greater than and equal is my sign here. So x is greater than and equal to 2, which is what this part is saying, that 2 is included. So x is greater than and equal to 2, but it's going to be less than 4. So my inequality symbol here is just going to be the less than sign without the equal sign. You'll see that there's a big line here that separates the unknown x from the rest of the expression. What this long line means is a member of. So x is a member of this set here. And then we designate what that set is, which is, it's going to be where x is between 2 and 4, but 2 is part of the set, so we say x is greater than and equal to 2, but x is going to be less than 4 because 4 isn't part of the set. So for that set builder notation, you have to have the curly brackets on either side. You have to have x as a member of this long line. And then you have your sentence, which explains the parameters of your set. So you're going to use inequality symbols to show that, and you're also going to include x in here. So that's the set builder notation versus the quick and easy interval notation here. So just to differentiate between those two, drawing the number lines can be very, very helpful. So I recommend doing that. Anybody have any questions about that before we move on? My next thing I'm going to talk about is evaluating absolute value. Okay, if nobody has questions, I'll just keep moving on. So I think on the surface, evaluating absolute value seems easy until you get a question like these ones here. And when you have a question that involves a little bit more of a complex expression, I think students wonder if their answer should have a negative or not. Absolute values can have negatives in the answer. Even though most absolute values of single digits do not have negatives in their answer, you can come across situations where you do have negatives. So I'm going to show you those examples. I'm going to show you some easy ones, and then I'm going to show you these complex ones that have tripped students up in the past. So all absolute value is that you're going to have a number, and then on either side you're going to have these absolute value bars. And what absolute value is asking is how far from 0 on the number line is that data from 0. And to solve that, if the number inside of the absolute value bars is positive, in other words it's greater than 0, then you're just going to keep it as a positive value. If the number is less than 0, then to find out what the value is, you're going to put a negative in front of that. So I'll show you what that means. It might seem counterintuitive, that definition, and that definition is found in the textbook. So let's look at this first one, the absolute value of 5. First of all, 5 is a positive number. It's greater than 0. So we're just going to leave it as is. It's a positive number, we just leave it as is, so it's going to be 5. -3, absolute value of -3. That's going to take into account this rule here, which states that to find the absolute value when your number is negative, put a negative sign in front of it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take -3, which was in my absolute value bars, and I'm going to put a negative in front of it, like that. And whenever I have the negative of a negative, that's going to give me a positive. So the absolute value of -3 is going to be -3, which is +3. So if I had, let's say, the absolute value of -12, I'm having the absolute value of a negative number, so I'm going to put -12, which the negatives cancel out, so my absolute value is going to be +12. Now I think that we all come to the point that whether we have a positive value inside the absolute value bars or a negative value within the absolute value bars, we just know instinctively that it's going to give us a positive answer. So in terms of our next example of absolute value of pi, pi is 3.14. That's the symbol for pi, or the number for pi. It's a positive value, so we know that the absolute value of pi is just going to be pi. In the case of negative pi, that means that we have -3.14. To find its absolute value, we're going to take the negative of negative pi, and that's going to leave us with pi. So again, not too far from what we know about positive and negative numbers. That should be okay. It's when we get into the next expressions here, like this, the square root of 3 minus 1 and 2 minus pi. When we're asked to find the absolute values of these ones, this is where we can get a little bit funny. The first thing that you're going to want to do when you are finding an absolute value of an expression is that you want to find out what it's approximately equal to. So instead of writing equals, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to say approximately equals. What I want to know is, inside of my absolute value bars, am I dealing with a positive number or a negative number? Because that's going to tell me what I need to do in order to evaluate the absolute value. So square root of 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into my calculator, and I see that the square root of 3 is equal to 1.732 and some more decimals. So I'm just going to leave it as, because it's just approximate value, I'm going to leave it as 1.73. I'm going to round off, and then I'm just going to move this line here. So I have 1.73 minus 1, which is approximately equal to the square root of 0.73. Sorry, the absolute value of 0.73. And that should be in absolute value bars, but for some reason this won't let me do my absolute value. And what you notice here is that now I know that I have, now I know that my absolute value, or my number inside my absolute value, is a positive number. So if it's a positive number, that means that I can just keep my signs the same. So I can rewrite this with equal sign and just say that the absolute value of the square root of 3 minus 1 is going to be the square root of 3 minus 1. And you might say, well, why did you go through all of that? Why did you find the approximate values inside the absolute value bars? And the reason why I did that is because if I found that the number inside the absolute value bar was a negative, then it would change all of the signs inside the absolute value bars. In this example, it didn't change anything because the square root of 3 minus 1 gives me 0.73 approximately, which is a positive number. Let's look at the next example where the approximate value of the number inside the absolute value bars is actually a negative number. So I have 2 minus pi. So what I'm going to do is find out the approximate value. An approximate value, instead of having your equals, you're doing the squiggly equal sign. So the squiggly equal sign, I'm going to do 2 minus 3.14. And 2 minus 3.14 gives me the value of approximately negative, 2 minus 3.14 is approximately negative 1.14. So inside my absolute value bars, I now have a negative number. That means when I find the absolute value of 2 minus pi, to find out what that's actually equal to, I want to change those values. It's actually going to be negative 2 minus pi will be my absolute value answer. Because it's going to be a negative, I need to follow the rule here, which means you put a negative sign in front of your expression, and then when you evaluate it for your absolute value, that negative will give me a negative 2, and then that negative applied to my negative pi gives me a positive pi. And of course it's not going to let me put my pi there, so I have to put it underneath. So I'll have negative 2 plus pi is the absolute value of 2 minus pi. So when you're doing absolute values of expressions, first find out if what the approximate value of the expression is inside of the absolute value bars. If it is a positive number, then you can just keep that as your absolute value answer. If it is approximately equal to a negative number, then when you evaluate the absolute value, you're going to put a negative sign in front of the expression, and that's going to change the signs for everything in the expression. Any questions on that? Everybody okay? Did everybody get to that part or have any problems with that part? Give me maybe a sad face or a smiley face if you're okay with that. I think most people are okay with the left side, but it's the expressions that they were having problems with. Okay, great. You might want to go back to that section and just make sure that you did understand those expression ones, because they're the tricky ones. Okay. Along the same lines is the distance between points on a number line. And really this part, I think the stickiness is just adding and subtracting integers. So for this example, when you're looking for the distance between points on a number line, we are using absolute value, and we are using this definition here, the absolute value of a minus b. So if my points are -19 and -4, and I want to find the distance between those 2 points, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the absolute value of -19, subtract my b value, which is -4. And then you have to know how to add and subtract your integers. So I have subtracting -4, that's the same as adding +4. So -19 plus 4 is going to give me negative oh, what am I doing here? -15. Yes, sorry. Mind hiccup there for a second. There we go. So for that one, I have -15 inside the bars, and then my absolute value is just going to be +15. So the distance between, if I wanted to check it out, then would be from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, my -4 to -19, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, -19, like that. So this distance here is a distance of positive 15 units. So there's just 15 units between those. And that's what I got for my answer, so I'm okay there. The big thing is how you set up inside the absolute value bars. So for B, the distance between -2 and +5, so for this one, I could do my number line. So I'm going to do -2, which is here, to +5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want to know this distance here. Now I could do it on my number line, but you're going to get numbers that are quite large, and you won't want it, like for instance, you could have a number like -506 all the way to +1082, and there's no way you want to make a number line that big and then count all the units. So that's why we're showing you this way. You're going to use that formula of a minus b, so -2 subtract +5, oops, and that's going to be the absolute value, like that. So -2 subtract 5 is the same as adding the -5, so just the integer rules we were talking about in the refresher unit. And -2 plus -5 gives us the absolute value of 7, -7. And so the distance between -2 and +5 is the absolute value of -7, which is just 7. So that's how you use that rule. Again, if it's just small numbers on a number line, then it's self-explanatory. You can draw the number line and look. It's when you get into larger negative and positive numbers where you wouldn't want to draw a huge number line that you would want to use this formula. So that's that one. Any questions? Give me a thumbs up if you're okay with that. Or let me know if you have any questions on that. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to go to the next one. All good? Is it sparking any questions for you? Let me know. Let's see what the next one I have is. Oh, rearranging formulas. So this is going to be looking at P.2 in algebra. If you're finding that you need more help in my math labs, In my math lab on the left-hand side, if you go through student links, through the second student links, that includes the e-text of Pearson. They always give you two options. Go for the second one because that gives you the full, Pearson website. When you go in there, you get your tabs on your left-hand side, and one of them is study plan. And the study plan basically looks at your homework and the things you've been doing and the ones that you've been having to do over and over again. And then it's going to generate for you more questions around those questions that you have problems with. So the study plan in Pearson, you don't get any marks for that. It's just when you want added questions, you can use the study plan. If you want even more than that, if you go to Khan Academy, so www.khanacademy. I think it's com actually, C-O-M, it could be org, but you can Google it. They have a great section on algebra. Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 that goes over how to rearrange equations in order to solve for an unknown variable. So if you need more help in that, Khan Academy is great for that. And Shane, you have a question. I can't remember why negative 19 and negative 4 is negative 19 plus 4 is equal to negative 15. That's a good question. Let me just give myself a little bit more room here. I'm going to take that out. So that's a question that has to do with how you add and subtract integers. So if you have negative 19 and we are subtracting negative 4. So whenever you are subtracting a number, it's the same as adding the opposite sign. So I'm going to add the opposite sign, negative 19 plus 4, and that's how you get negative 15. Whenever you're adding a number, a positive number to a negative number, you're going to the right in the number line. So when you're doing integers, if you feel that you can use a number line, do that. But I think after some practice, it should come fairly, it should come faster in knowing how to apply the rules that whenever you're subtracting a number, it's the same as adding the opposite sign. Or I think another way we do it is that if you have two negatives, they cancel each other out and create a positive. That might be another way that you might have been taught that as well. And really it's whichever way sticks in your brain. Two negatives make a positive. Whenever you subtract something, it's the same as adding the opposite. That sort of a thing. Shane, so that's great. So you know that two negatives makes a positive. Is assume that it's always subtracted when using absolutes. Remember that this is a formula for distance between points on a number line. So we're always going to subtract the points from each other. I could have put B subtract A or A subtract B. Both formulas will give me the distance between points, but this formula is just for distance between points on a number line. Yes. Great. Okay. So yeah, so that was the formula for that, and that's why we were subtracting. You don't always, sometimes if we weren't looking at distance between points and I was just giving you an absolute value expression, then you would just go by what they were asking, whether you were to add or subtract. So moving on to P.2, we are at 7:45, but my class isn't until 8, so I wanted to go over the rearranging formulas, and I'll have these two last slides as the end for tonight. But if you have any questions that we didn't get to tonight, send me an email or post in the Q&A. And if anything comes up this week, just reach out. You can email me, you can phone me, you can text me, post in the Q&A, and I'm happy to put up a solution for you or do a quick video, whatever you need. So rearranging formulas, if you need more practice, Khan Academy is a great place. In this example here, it says solve for W. So what we want to do is isolate W, which means to have it W by itself in the equation, which means that we want to move everything else over to the other side. And in algebra, the way we move everything over to the other side is we pick the terms that are the furthest away from W to move first. So that's going to be this 2L. We're going to move that first. And because the 2 is closest to W, we're going to move that last. And how we move them is by doing the opposite operation. So if I want to move 2L over to P side, I'm going to do the opposite that's happening here. And it's 2L, if you look at in front, you see that there is no sign, which means that it's actually a positive. So if I have positive 2L, the opposite of that is going to be negative 2L. So what I'm going to do to remove it is I'm going to subtract 2L from the right side, and whatever I do to the right side, I'm also going to do to the left side. So if you don't have a sign in front of the term that you're moving, then you assume it to be positive. Do the opposite of what that is. Opposite of positive is negative, so positive 2L minus 2L is 0, so that's just going to leave me with 2W on this side, and then on the other side I have to subtract 2L. And I just have to leave it as P subtract 2L because I'm not dealing with like terms, so I just have to leave it as is. And now, to get W by itself on the right-hand side, I have to get rid of this 2. And I always say to myself, what is the 2 doing to the W? It's multiplying. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. 2 divided by 2 is 1. That cancels that out. And whatever I do to one side, I also have to do to the other. That's going to leave me with W on one side and P subtract 2L over 2 on the other. And that's what W is equal to, P minus 2L over 2. Anyone have any questions about that? That's the easier one because there's only one W that I need to do. But in my next one, in the last one, I'm going to solve for C where there's actually 2 instances of C. But does anybody have questions about this one first before I go over that last example? Everybody's okay? Give me a thumbs up if you're okay, or text a question. Awesome. You'll get used to me asking for thumbs up and stuff. Why is it not P minus plus W? I'm not sure, Manel, what you mean. Oh, equals. I'm not sure what you mean, Manal. Oh, because I can't cancel out the 2. The only way I can cancel out the 2 is if there was a 2 in front of the P here, and then they would both cancel out. But in this case, I can't cancel out because the 2's because there isn't a 2 in front of the P. So so I have to leave it as P minus 2L all over 2. If there was a 2 in front of the P, then that 2 would cancel out on both, for both, and I'd be okay. So that's why I couldn't cancel. You were trying to simplify, which is great, but in this case we wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, last one. I'll show you what you do in this case. When you have your unknown is written down twice in a formula, what you want to do is you want to remove that as the greatest common factor. So you're going to rewrite the equation by taking out the c from the expression. So what I've done here is there's a c here and a c here. If I take it out of the expression, I'm left with 1 plus m. If you can't see where I got the 1 plus m, let me just use the distributive property and multiply. C times 1 is c. C times positive m is plus cm or mc. So the opposite of taking it out is this right here. That's the first thing you want to do whenever you're rearranging a formula for a variable that happens more than once in an expression. You want to take that out of the expression so that you're now left with only one instance of the unknown, and then solve by isolating it like you would normally do. So let me take out all those hen scratches just to clean this up a little bit. So here is where I had it. I took c out of the expression and I'm left with c is c times the expression of 1 plus m. And now what I want to do is isolate c. So to isolate c, I want to take this 1 plus m and pull it over to the other side. And whenever I'm moving it over to the other side, I want to do the opposite of what it's doing here. And on this side, what it's doing is it's actually multiplying c by 1 plus m. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing by 1 plus m. And I'm going to divide this side by 1 plus m. That cancels out 1 plus m on the right hand side, leaving me with just c. So I can write c is equal to p over 1 plus m. And all of the expressions where you have the unknown occurring more than once, you're going to want to factor it out of the expression, just like I did here. And that will get it down to one instance, which will make it much easier for you to try and solve for that unknown. So that's P.1 and P.2. We didn't get into exponent laws or radicals, and I think most students are working on P.3 and P.4 this week. So if you have questions on those, post to the Q&A, and then Monday's Skype will just be on any questions that you have on P.3 and P.4, unless you're writing the test on Monday. If you're writing the test on Monday, then please reach out, let me know via email or text or the Q&A if you have a question, and I'm happy to help you with that then. But Evan and Manal and Shane, do you have any questions before we leave for tonight? Thank you for coming out tonight. That hour goes by so fast, or the 45 minutes goes by so fast. Oh, Shane, yes. Do you know what? I didn't get to that, but that's what this slide is for. What I will do, because I do have another class coming up, I will do a quick, not a quick, I'll do a video on this, and I will add it to the recording that I post, this recording that I post tonight. Would that be okay, Shane? And if you have ones that you want me to do that you come up to on your homework that you want me to go through, post to the Q&A and I will do that right away. Happy to. And the more that's in there, the more videos that we'll have on that. So that's no problem. So I'm going to write myself a note, but I will do these ones for a video for tonight, and then whatever you folks have for me this week, just let me know and I'll do videos for that, no problem. And Evan's question is, oh, the reflection is due after the unit test. So don't worry if it's after the deadline. I would much rather you do the unit test and then do the reflection afterwards. That's a great question, Evan. Thank you. Well, thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks, Manel. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Shane. I'll be looking for your questions, and just tune in to the announcements, and I'll have both videos posted later on this evening. Good night, everyone. I'm going to stay in because I have my Math 1047s coming in at 8, but all you have to do is click that top right button, the X, to get out, and I am going to put up my next PowerPoint. So don't mind me. Oh, and I should say for those of you that are watching this, that the same goes to you. If you have any questions, just let me know in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to post those up, or let me know through email or text, and I can do questions for you as well that you'd like extra videos for. So thank you for watching. I hope you found the tips here helpful for your study, and I hope to chat with you soon. Bye for now.